Lake Lewis does a great job covering the NFL, Washington Redskins for USA Today. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the buzz that all of a sudden the young man out of Stanford is on the Washington Redskins radar?
Well, let me tell you, 1 to 10, being told by some people in the building, I was told literally that a lot of people in there love him. So I'm going to put it at like a 9.
Now, the question is, will he be available at 17?
Maybe not. Maybe so. I mean, there's no exact science in this whole thing.
Nope.
And I think that, he's clearly a top player at his position. One of the 2-3 best running backs available. So it depends on what teams need. I just know in this system, in this offense, I think he would be a perfect complement to Kirk Cousins and what they're trying to do. I think him and, back like Chris Thompson together wouldn't be the power type running attack, but it would be a dual threat type of backfield. Yep. So I think he could be their guy.
Yeah, and we saw Thompson a little more implemented in that offense, especially catching the ball out of the backfield. It's funny you say that because everyone I've spoken to, a lot of these beat reporters that cover different teams, the same thing they've told me over the last 24 to 48 hours. He's on said team's radar. The Giants have him on the radar. I think Carolina would be a perfect fit. You stick him right on that offense, he's their best route runner. I've been preaching, the Eagles as well, if he's there at 14. And now I don't know if the more we're talking about it, his stock keeps rising. But the bottom line is, I don't question how many times he can carry the football. You're not going to ask him to carry or tote the football 30 to 35. But if he can get you 14 to 20 touches and be that change of pace, versatile back, listen, you get an offensive coordinator that knows how to tinker with the offense a little bit and utilize him in the right way, he's going to be extremely effective.
Yeah, and to me, that's Jay Gruden. I think if you look at everywhere he's been, they haven't been, one of the top running teams. Matter of fact, if you look at the Redskins as a whole, Chris Thompson had, average 5.2 yards a carry last year. But Rob Kelly and Matt Brown, guys that gave him significant contributions, Matt Jones, all of them were around 4.1 or less. So if you look at any other team in the league, for instance, Dallas, Ezekiel Elliott averaged over 5 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm.
The kid Langford in Chicago was a rookie average like 5.6 yards a carry. So if you have a power running game, you're going to get the big carries, you're going to get the big yards. But if you're an offense that's more like maybe a New England or Washington's, for instance, maybe even the Giants for that matter, they pass the ball. You could put a guy like McCaffrey in your backfield, and he could do some special stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Like you bring up a great point with the Giants. Teams typically will run to set up the pass. The Giants do it the opposite.
The other way around.
Exactly.
The Redskins do too.
Yeah, they throw to set up the. That's why they go wide with those 4 or 5 wide out. So and I think to me he's very versatile. He's got a little bit of everything in him, and I think that's anywhere he goes, it's a good pick. Now, when you talk need though for Washington, is it offense first or is it defense?
No, I think it's quite apparent that they need help on the defensive line. I also think that, in today's game, and I think you have to kind of look at who they play. Obviously, they're in the NFC East. The NFC East is just ridiculous as far as the receivers in the division. If you look at the offenses, the Cowboys have a high-profile offense. The Giants have a high-profile offense, and the Eagles are on their way to possibly having one. Alshon Jeffries is a big addition for them. So if you're the Redskins, you need help. You need to be able to pressure the quarterback, collapse the pocket. If you can't do that, then you need to have some linebackers that can run around the field. And I think by them going out and getting Zach Brown, who was with Buffalo last year, made the Pro Bowl, that's a big need filled for them at middle linebacker. But they need another one too. And I think a guy like Reuben Foster, if he falls and he's there at 17, they have to run to the podium. And another kid that I'm really high on is right there, not too far from you guys. And that's Hassan Reddick from Temple. I think he could be really special, and that might be a guy that they take a look at as well.
It's funny, too, because we know players, they rise and they fall come draft time, whether it's off-the-field extracurricular activities or failed drug tests, this, that, the other thing. And sometimes, I don't like to say one man's trash is another man's treasure, but the bottom line is sometimes teams, they know they have a need, and they'll look past some of those red flags, and they will take a flyer on a player. And I think we're seeing that with 2 to 3, 4 of the players this year. We're seeing it with Peppers, with Foster. You have the kid from Florida as well. Some of the domestic charges, the battery charges. It's going to be interesting how all these dominoes fall into place. Like, I think ultimately you're going to see some movement, and I go and I look at the first couple picks in the draft because I think, look, if Cleveland's going to go Garrett, they're going to go Garrett. If they all of a sudden throw that curveball at everyone and shock the world and they go with Trubisky at number 1, what they're in essence doing, they're missing out no matter what on Garrett because he's not going to fall to 12. So there's that little mind, that chess game right there. But then you look at number 2. Then you look at the Jets. You look at San Francisco with Lynch and Shanahan. You look at the Jets and their secondary needs. You look at the Bears. Maybe they also, even though they believe they have a quarterback, maybe they take a flyer on Trubisky. Now, I think 2 of the X factors to me, McCaffrey, but I also think Watson. And I think no matter what, and I said this, and tell me if you agree with this, I think Kansas City, the Giants, Arizona, Buffalo, the Giants certainly will have to look for a quarterback eventually. But I kind of link possibly Watson with Kansas City, and I throw out the analogy of what John Dorsey did with the Packers back in 2004, 2005. They drafted Aaron Rodgers. It turned out to be a diamond in the rough and a gem, and he sat behind Brett Favre. I can kind of see that same scenario with Kansas City. They take the same approach with Watson because you grab a quarterback for Andy Reid. Alex Smith is not the quarterback going forward. He's the quarterback now in the present, but not 3 to 5 years from now. But I think Watson would be a good pickup. Yeah,
and I think that the luxury of that is it's going to have to be a playoff team, in my opinion, who does that with Watson. Who is hence the Giants. I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form with the activity that they've had in the offseason that maybe they take and take Watson or Trubisky and have them sit behind Eli, who, let's face it, he's still at this point, I think, is 3 good years left in him.
I agree.
Maybe 2. Maybe 2 strong years and a 3rd year where it's time. So maybe they take the flyer and and say, what, we're not going to draft for need, but we'll draft this quarterback and develop him. But I think it's going to be a team that probably has made the playoffs over the past 2 years where they have that luxury to their fan base to see what they're getting, and the fan base won't be impatient. It's the same thing with like Peppers. A guy like that, now that all these things are happening and you hear about the diluted urine sample from the combine, Reuben Foster as well, those are the kind of players that, if they do fall, watch a team like New England grab them and just, the power
because
of the
that's what they do.
Yeah, well, because the power of the organization will police those players and make sure that there is nothing ongoing as far as any off-the-field antics. So, and then they're just going to get a dominant football player who's pretty PO'd at that point because of what happened, them falling, and then they're going to go out on the field and go nuts. That's what they do. So I don't think this whole thing with Peppers.
I don't either. I don't think it's gonna really kill. Listen, he might get scooped up by the Cowboys. The Cowboys, they have major secondary issues. They basically lost everyone in the secondary. They lost, what was it, with Carr, Claiborne left free agency. They lost Skandrick. I'm sorry, he would join Skandrick and Brown. So, you've got a young player in there with some corners, but you also lost your cornerback depth. Yeah,
and you lost Barry Church as well.
Barry Church, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so to me, I think if you're even the Eagles, I mean, the Eagles need some secondary help too, and Leotis McKelvin's gone, so perhaps you could get a guy like Peppers and kind of have him be that hybrid, guy, could play some nickel corner, also could definitely play downhill from a strong safety standpoint, and also give you some punt and kickoff returns, options. So I just think that he's a solid football player. We saw how special he could be. I don't think this drops him off because this is the only thing we've ever heard about any quote-unquote character issues.
Right.
It's just this one incident. Foster is a little different. He's had some other baggage with him, and he's also got an injury that some people are concerned about too, as far as a hip injury. So, I'm sorry, rotator cuff.
The rotator cuff, his shoulder. Which, by the way, his agent came out, and again, the agent's got to say it. He's 100% healthy and ready to go. But again, that's a tricky injury when you play the secondary position.
I mean, this guy's strong. I think what this is I really do. I think teams put put agents up to it. They put some of us in the media up to it to speak for them, so that they can get some guys who they want, who could be hovering around their pick. And what it does is it makes other teams, start to think twice, give them some red flags, and then those players just fall right in your lap. So the Redskins are 17. If you told me a month ago that a guy like Malik Hooker from Ohio State could possibly fall to them, or Foster, I wouldn't accept it. There's a chance that those guys could be sitting there now because of things that have happened and because of some nagging injuries that people seem to be concerned about.
And then all of a sudden, GMs, they are scrambling because now they have to go to the whiteboard and they got to come up with plan B, C, and D. I mean, that's the beauty of the draft. I'll give you a name for you guys down there in the D.C. area, maybe a second, I would say third-round pick. This kid, Trey Hendrickson, out of Florida Atlantic. He's got a little Kiwanuka in him, Matthias Kiwanuka. He's got a nose for the football. Now you're talking about a defensive end that can get to the quarterback and be disruptive. I think, if anything, he would be late second round, early third round. That's just kind of a name I'm throwing out there. I think he'll be a nice little fit. Let's quickly, while I got you on for a couple more minutes, let's switch gears to the NBA. I thought last night, and you tweeted it out, and I agreed 100%. If the Washington Wizards are going to be taken serious, that's a game that they have to win. Now, they imploded. They got sloppy, and they let Atlanta come right back. Now, is that just lack of maturity, or was it Wall doing a little too much, or the fact that it was a total team effort and they just basically imploded? Because they had that game, especially when they made the run. They had that game. They had Atlanta. They got so sloppy in that game, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't put anything on Wall at this point because I think he's just playing at a superstar level. He can't do it all. I mean, and he's been doing it all. Bradley Beal, even though he scored 30 points last night, it's the way he's getting the points, which are jump shots. And I think for the Wizards would be a more dynamic team if they were in attack mode as far as going to the basket, how Wall does. But he's the only player that does that on that team. If Bradley Beal as a two guard was getting 30 points and maybe half those points came, from the free throw line, that means he's in attack mode. And now you're starting to get calls, which means you're getting in the bonus. You're putting the other team in foul trouble. They don't have that outside of Wall. And I think it starts to play into the other team's hand, which is Atlanta for this matter. Atlanta's not as good as the Wizards. Make no mistake about it. They don't have the talent pool that the Wizards have. But what they do have is they have heart. And the Wizards needed to match that in Atlanta, and they didn't. They didn't come out with any urgency in the first game in Atlanta in Game 3, and they got blown out. Yesterday, I do think that they played with the urgency that's needed to be successful on the road. Unfortunately, as you said, they started turning the ball over a lot down the stretch, and that cost them a game. And now all the pressure's on them. If they don't win here tomorrow, they're in trouble, bottom line.
And that's disappointing because I really think I don't think they would beat Cleveland in a 7-game series if they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
You're with me on this, man. They're the best. They're the best team in the East
to challenge them
to extend Cleveland. Yeah. They're the only team, frankly, in the East that I think extends Cleveland. And people may say, "Oh, you're crazy. You're in D.C. You're saying this." Just go back and look at the games. They absolutely match up well with Cleveland. The last game they played them, people think it's the overtime loss when LeBron hit the shot. No, it's actually. A week later, they went to Cleveland. Everybody played 30-plus minutes as far as all the starters, and they beat Cleveland by 16 on the road. So I just think that their confidence would be even higher against Cleveland. The problem is they got to get past Atlanta, and as of right now, that's not a done deal.
No, and at the end of the day, you have to play defense in the NBA playoffs, and you have to win on the road. You have to. You look at the Boston-Chicago series. It's not, there's no home court advantage there. There isn't.
Well, it's done. It is now.
well, yeah. I mean, Thomas can only do so much. Yeah, and
it's done. That series over. It'll be Boston 4-2, and it's sad
because of the Rondo. Yeah.
If Rondo hadn't gotten hurt, there's a chance Boston could have been swept. That's how efficient Chicago was attacking Boston before Rondo got hurt. And they don't have an answer now. They don't have a floor general that can keep the spacing. That basically can keep them organized and structured. And right now, Boston's exploiting that, and I don't see how Chicago can recover from this. And
Cleveland just kind of sits back. They have a little rest as we start to close it out, which is amazing to think because, when you get the effort that you get from LeBron at 32 years of age, still logging a ton of minutes, Kyrie and then Kevin Love giving you 18 to 25 on a given night, it seems as though they're going to be on another collision course against Golden State, and you saw that game last night when it was 9-0 and then 25-9. That was it. Turn out the lights, go to bed. When Golden State's on like that, and I get it, Portland just got in as an 8th seed, and they only have Lillard. They had one player. But when Golden State is on like that, you cannot beat them. That's why I think it's critical. You have to get that great defensive matchup. Now you see Memphis starting to push San Antonio a little bit. You extend that series, and once again, Golden State gets a little more added rest. You let Utah and the Clippers go at it, and the Clippers are dealing with some injuries. So that's kind of, to me, these aren't sexy playoffs, and they're getting a little chippy, but you have to take advantage of a situation. And I think Cleveland's taking advantage of a situation, and Golden State's going to take advantage of what's transpiring out in the Western Conference.
Well, the NBA is getting what they want at the end of the day, and what that is they're two best teams, two teams that they know are going to play each other for a third straight year. They're getting them rested. So this is almost like, the soon-to-be national title game, and the rest is the NIT,
right? You're right.
or Invitational.
Right.
So, they're extending all these other series out, 6-7 games. They get more money. The fans of those towns see these games. But at the end of the day, San Antonio is the only team that I think really could, just make it. They wouldn't win 2 games on Golden State. I don't see any team beating Golden State more than 2 times in a series. Houston could be, a very fun series to watch, so to speak. You might be able to see a lot of offensive fireworks from Harden and Gordon and those guys. But at the end of the day, no one's beating Golden State but themselves as far as getting out the West, and the same goes for Cleveland.
I agree.
And then when they play, let's just hope the officiating doesn't take over that series as it did last year. That's all I'm going to say before we get to that. But the officiating in the playoffs has been atrocious.
We'll get to that point when it comes. All right, my friend, listen, great stuff as always. Enjoy the draft Thursday. We'll recap it next week, and we'll talk a lot more football and NBA. Always appreciate you jumping on board. All right, you got it.
Cool.
Be well.
Take care, bro.
All right, you too. All right, Lake Lewis from USA Today, Redskins Wire, covers the NFL as well. Good stuff.